The title of our panel time together is Meeting the Moment, Dialogue on AI in the Classroom. But I imagine it'll be a somewhat broader conversation than that. I think this is the most popular session in terms of just registration count, so I'm excited to have you all here and continue an amazing conversation that began with our keynote from the wonderful Dr. Christy Ford earlier this morning. And so I think we're all kind of cognitively primed for engaging in these topics. And the panel up here has already started talking, so I'm going to get us started so you can get as much value out of what they're sharing as possible, because there's so much excitement about it. And I hope that you will feel free to engage our panel as well. We'll set apart some time for dedicated Q&A and discussion following the panel. But we're all a professional community here, and if we have something of value to share, then I'm sure our panelists will want to hear it as well. I wanted to start with a few kind of inquiries to get us started for the whole room. Who's used AI with students in the classroom in the past academic year? Has anybody used that? Okay, great. Good mix of both. Did you use that for, give me some examples, instructional design, assessment, evaluation, ideation? Let's popcorn some ways that you've used it, if you don't mind sharing a little bit.
Scaffolding and writing for ESL students.
Scaffolding, writing for ESL, exactly. Love that. Great. Yeah, go ahead, Megan.
I created some problem-based working vignettes so that students, I can say, hey, this is the outcome I want. How do I problem solve this backwards?
Right, perfect. Love that example. Other ways that we've used it? Yeah, Katie.
Creating SMART goals and then fine-tuning them.
Oh, that's excellent. Love that. Is that leadership course or business or? Okay, very good. Yeah, Rachel.
I use it to create rubrics all the time.
Yeah, there you go. An instructional design project manager over here. That makes sense. Yeah, love that. I had the privilege of redeveloping a course on Hebrew poetry for an upcoming term, and we made use of the Notebook LN tool to create some really engaging audio overviews. But there's also a particular discussion tool assignment. We're not doing discussion forums anymore, we're setting those aside, but using the discussion tool, having our students create creative artifacts that reflect their engagement with the Psalms in the Hebrew poetry course, and encourage students to make use of generative AI tools for creating compelling visuals and then reflecting on kind of what it means to them. So great, I'd love to hear that we are using it. We actually met in this room last year at the symposium for a breakout session on AI, and the tone was much more trepidatious and apprehensive as to the risks and uncertainty, and now there seems to be a general sense of optimism, which is great because that means that we're ready for the next mountain, which is how do we do it at scale, how do we do it safely, and how do we think beyond some of the most kind of basic applications of generative AI to advance teaching and learning. So I want to introduce our panel today. I'll let them introduce ourselves, and we'll start with Chad here.
Yeah, hi, my name's Chad. If we've not met, it's probably because I live in North Georgia. So I chair the School of Mission here, and then I'm also helping to lead a university in East Africa that partners with SEU, and then my other job is working with One Hope. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer.
Hi everyone, I'm Cody. I teach math and computer science. I'm also over the SU Tech program, so data science, software development, and cybersecurity. So AI is definitely influencing those fields, and it's really been an interesting few years to see how it is impacting and changing that.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Christine. I teach psychology, and I'm also the chair over human and social sciences, so counseling, psychology, human services, and criminal justice. So we're exploring multiple ways that we can bring AI in fun, exciting ways.
Awesome.
Last but not least, hi, I'm Amber. I am the program coordinator and professor of criminal justice here at SEU. And as you can imagine, criminal justice is a field that AI is quite controversial. So we're trying to navigate that space and get our students prepared for that.
Excellent, great. Well, I'm glad that we have such an interdisciplinary panel today representing different academic functions and departments of the university, as well as varying levels of experience and engagement with artificial intelligence and education. Christine and Amber actually are with me, part of a institute that we will be participating in this year. The American Association of Colleges and Universities is launching its first institute on AI pedagogy in the curriculum. So we're part of a small team of 5 that will be working with that institute and their subject matter experts to develop policy related to AI, to develop initiatives to advance artificial intelligence in the classroom. So you can expect to hear from us throughout the year as we work with our colleagues and faculty and staff across campus to realize those particular objectives. So I'm excited for that. I'll go ahead and have a seat and we can get started with the panel. I have a few provocations and inquiries that I'm going to put before the panel, and we've got plenty of questions to take up our time today, but we can also feel free to diverge and explore the adjacent possible as we discuss this. So I want to start with the question, what is one concrete student learning outcome or workflow you've measurably improved with AI this year in your context at the university? And any one of you can feel free to start off.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Or I'll take someone.
I'll go and start.
Great, thanks.
All right, so let's see, the question was, what is something that a workflow that I've used? So I think Dr. Ford mentioned a lot this morning, it's like there's a lot of hesitancy about using these tools. I get them approaching me and they're like, so I used AI to do this. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, let's see how you use that. So in my online asynchronous courses, to make sure that they're learning and to have a gauge of where they're at, there are mock interviews. That's pretty common in the tech space where they have to sit down with a panel of interviewers and answer technical questions. So we do that in the class and it carries a good portion of the weight. Oh, hello. Yeah. So, and there was a student that was really struggling with the terminology. Like I could tell like he had a basic understanding, but he never took the time to have a conversation with anyone except for me. So he would use ambiguous language like stuff and that and this thing. I'm like, okay, we're making progress. So he didn't do so well on the first interview. So I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and figure out how you can practice this. So I loaded up ChatGPT and I explained the idea of like getting context. Like, help me with this, but like there's a whole spectrum of knowledge. So I went to the syllabus and I pulled in the intended learning objectives. I pulled in what the assignment was and gave him a little overview on how to prompt engineer. So I said, okay, put that in and then tell its role. So he did that. He practiced a few interviews with just the AI assistant, and the next live interview, he did significantly better. And interestingly, that next interview was on machine learning itself. So he was talking to a machine learning model about machine learning. So that was one, and it was a significant improvement. And the exciting part, probably not just the score, but the confidence he had. Like he was using the real language of the field to do well.
Yeah, that's that confidence literacy that Dr. Ford was talking about in the keynote. That's great. Other examples of how you've measurably improved student learning outcomes or workflows with AI this year?
So I have something I'm going to be doing hopefully this year if I can make it work. But so I'm teaching like my first face-to-face class in like 17 years, starting next week. So because I've been mostly in the world of online. But I want to create a custom GPT as a study guide for my students. So with ChatGPT, I want to feed in my assignment questions and set the boundaries that it's a conversational study partner. And since it's custom, then when it's all set up, I can give all my students a link and they can go in and it will ask questions based on, it will not ask the exam questions, but it'll ask concept questions. The students will answer, and if they don't get it right, then they'll have a conversation. It will tutor on the spot, and they can go through the whole session, and it will be a study guide for each of their exams. And then I think to encourage them to use it, I'm going to have them send me the transcripts, and that can be extra credit or something like that. So that's something that I'm getting ready to start programming, because I've never made a custom GPT, but I feel like me and ChatGPT together can conquer that.
You got this.
Yes.
And I'd recommend connecting with our Director of Academic Advising, Jennifer Sabin, who recently developed a custom GPT that they're beginning to roll out to students that is designed to help them with self-efficacy as they plan their degree journey at the university. So I definitely recommend connecting with her on that. Once you create your first GPT, you can't stop it. Just keep going. Yeah.
Like shows.
All right, well, let's move on to our next question. How do you make AI use explicit and bounded in your course? Where is it encouraged and where is it off limits and why? And Chad, if you don't mind, I'll put this to you because I know Hoskins School of Mission recently developed a comprehensive policy on AI use in the classrooms. Be interested to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, and this is my wife Janine, she's,
My son just hurt his hand.
Oh, no, sorry.
Sorry. So she's been part of the workflow with our team to try to develop all of our policies to integrate with the. You ever watch those videos on YouTube and they're like, I'm not responsible for your health, or I'm not like, this is not legal advice, or like like within the next 2 minutes, something I'm going to say is going to be against regulations or illegal. So let me just put that out there.
Safe space.
And if you've generated any images with AI, you're probably in the illegal category with me. We're just waiting for the the ruling to come down. So we're all in it together.
They can't put us all in jail.
Right. And in the
Wait a minute, I'm Prem.
Talking about the adjacent
Yeah.
possible.
Justin has a folder, and so we've got examples of everything that I'm going to refer to today in the folder there. Yeah. So our policies, we wrote policies for the undergrad, grad, and doctoral, but we also wrote policies for the faculty, so that because we're working with very senior leaders in our doctoral, and so it was really important to us that we be as transparent with them on how we're using AI as what we're asking. It's two-way street. I think all of them have appreciated that, and we tried to structure the AI guidelines a little differently at each of those levels, and all of that's there for you. I was going to say, sort of to this degree, and maybe a bit to the previous question. I've been running GPT since whenever it, the
November 2022.
Yeah, November 2022.
Yeah.
Whenever that debut day was, right? I bought a paid account the next day, and just trying to understand, because I was convinced that this is going to happen. And so I'm not an AI apologist. I want to be an AI realist, and I am constantly struck that people are comparing the negatives of AI with the theoretical positives of pre-AI rather than sort of the real issue of AI, right? So it's always a false comparison. I just run into it all the time. So just really quickly for me, kind of some of the things that we're trying to do to bring it in. We're using it very heavily, especially in our doctoral program, for advanced organizing and scaffolding of learning. So we're creating synthetic IP literature reviews that are interdisciplinary, creating sort of hypothetical conversations between thought leaders that would never occur in the real world. So I want Yukai Chow, who's the head of gamification, to be talking to Daniel Pink, who's thinking about internal motivation, to be dialoguing with Gallup on their Q12 employee engagement, to be talking with transformational learning theorists. And I can just set it up, and it will be like an experiment, right? I'm not trying to position this as like final word or final authority. I'm trying to create learning opportunities for our students. So they all know that it's generated by AI. I give them, they can have my prompts, they can have any of that. That's all really useful. And then from there, we recommend to all of our students that they buy Speechify. It's $139 a year. It reads all of your PDFs to you. Just get it. And I recommend which voice I would go with, and this is transformative, you should do this. We go further, and we go ahead and have AI segmented into summaries that are transcribed for an avatar to speak, and we use HeyGen. So HeyGen's another platform. It's a great platform. It's already optimized for translation. So you can create a synthetic-based document. AI will derive it into however many lectures you want from it. Then you load those into HeyGen. HeyGen will create a wonderful live person teaching your content, and then it's immediately ready to be translated into Spanish, French, Portuguese, whatever you want. And all of this is now. So there are links to examples of all of that in the folder. Of course, we use Notebook LM and the new Google Vids and the integration there. There's another platform called Knowledge that we're looking at, and we adopted it too early and it was too clunky back then. I just left it alone for a while. And now I've got a mental note that I've got to get back to it.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
Because you're using a lot of different tools, and I saw yesterday that, and this happens with Silicon Valley, came out of MIT that 95% of AI startups have already failed.
Yeah, of course.
So you're creating these experiences for the students. Is there a way to do this in a way that, like, if that system fails or is bought out, that you still have access to these
Yeah.
toolings?
Contingency.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really a good question. So, I mean, so, you know, AI is I think the right way to think about it is like a generator for electricity, right? And so you use whatever your, you know, Gemini or Claude or whatever your preferred AI is, you use that to generate electricity to go do something else, and then you store it in a different battery. And so, I think it won't necessarily matter to us what happens with sort of your foundational or frontier models. I don't think any of those are going to go away anytime soon. I think Grok, Gemini, Claude, and GPT are all going to be around for a while. It's just, we're at 350 billion in capital investment this year, and within 7 years it'll be over $1 trillion, I think is the current estimate. I mean, the growth in the industry is it's truly insane.
You just listed a bunch of AI
Sure. Yes, sir.
purveyors. You didn't include Grok in that.
Grok, no, it was the first one I said. Yeah. No worries at all. So what we're doing is we're creating derivative assets, and then we're storing the derivative assets in other places. So in Dropbox, on YouTube, wherever makes sense. I'm like the least involved with all things walled garden SEU, so I do most of my experimenting in other places, which is another one of those reasons I'm sure I'm out of compliance. But
You're a covert agent of innovation at the university.
I'm just
We accept that. Yeah.
Internal CIA.
But what you can do, the learning journeys you can create for your students are already so stunning. They're so powerful. And I was at a conference over the summer for One Hope. We were in Turkey. And I heard they were having a conversation on AI, and I got so mad I had to take a walk afterwards. Because someone said AIs are so prone to hallucination that you should only ask it questions. You should only ask it questions you already know the answer to. And I had to walk out, and I was like, "You're full of crap. You're an idiot, and you should not be talking." So I went and I had an hour-long diatribe with AI, just furious, just talking about the ridiculous double standards that we apply, the bias, the cognitive bias that's just everywhere, like manna on the ground, and blah, 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 blah. And so, by the way, if you're not diatribing with AI, you should take long walks in the woods, and you should just vent your feelings, and AI will produce really useful intellectual IP out of it.
Yeah. And it doesn't have cortisol levels, so you're not going to induce emotional damage.
For real, and it will counsel you afterwards, and it's excellent. You can tell it what kind of persona you want to do, like your ratios of cognitive behavioral therapy to nouthetic to all those things. So I had a good conversation with it because I just think our standards are absurd and ridiculous. And so you have that paper. It's an ebook. One of our alumni created it. One of our GAs turned it into an ebook for me, and it's in the folder. And I hope it challenges some of your thinking. And I wrote it in an hour. And then I had 05 critique 03's model, and it recommended changes. We implemented the changes. I didn't have to implement them. A guy who did his undergraduate in graphic design implemented the changes on epistemic double standards and the absurdity of our current approaches to truth and knowledge. You can read the ebook, and this is an example of where we're going. Most of our work is overseas. I don't want textbooks. None of my overseas students can get the textbooks. I want a world where here's everything you need.
That's good.
And we're approaching that world very rapidly, and we're going to have huge lawsuits on what works and what doesn't. But in the end, for better or for worse, progress is going to win.
Well, you can make the case that you're contributing to the public good by doing that work.
You can, and it's, we're not going to have a Luddite moment here. It's just, I'm just telling you, it's not going to happen. There's too much at stake. And so, I'm trying to be really mindful of it, and I went way over time.
Well, I hope we'll eventually hear how you really feel about it.
There's a lot of I could shoot off 7 tangents on that one.
No, but that's really good, and it sounds like you've developed a really open and transparent space in your teaching and learning environments where you are sharing prompts, sharing your approach. And I think you've probably all seen the headlines about students saying, I didn't know my professor was using AI to grade my work, right? And now we're seeing lawsuits against institutions because they feel that they've been cheated. And so, we don't have a policy across the entire institution yet that speaks to the degree to which you can leverage AI to evaluate and assess student work. So until we do have that, which I think we're working towards, I think transparency is the best policy. Treating your learners like adults or emerging adults, and co-creating opportunities for learning together. I think Rick had a question for the panel.
Chad, I can tell you're not real passionate about it.
It's partly just coffee.
Yeah.
Should have had my second cup.
There you go. Yeah.
I struggle with the, you said something like you shouldn't ask an AI text generator something that you don't already know the answer.
Right, that was the critique that was raised by the person in Turkey.
Yeah. And I have asked Chat GPT and Claude and a couple other ones things that I do know the answer to, and it's not getting it right.
That's right.
And that's where I struggle with. It's kind of like, I mean, I've read research papers where I'm like, you guys didn't do good research here. This is not right. Like, you have a poor data set, and you can't make this assumption. And there's just so much of it out there.
So much.
So I like the idea. We have a course called Mirror of Princes. So we read Machiavelli's The Prince, and we read Erasmus, The Education of a Christian Prince. And they're like two opposite ends of the spectrum. And it would be so cool to set up, could I have two avatars that play each one and then have a dialogue?
Yeah.
But if I did that,
Yeah.
are they having a correct dialogue?
Right.
And that's what I want my students to be able to discern. So they would still need to read the books. They couldn't just shortcut it and just go to the dialogue. So.
And if I may, so one of the things that I implemented last academic year in my ethics class, at the beginning in criminal justice ethics, a lot of it is based on some of our very common ancient philosophers. So we look at Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato initially, and then we also kind of expand that a little bit to look at utilitarianism and whatnot. And I told them they were my guinea pigs, but I gave them an assignment, and I didn't give them a word count or a page count. I said, it's 3-part. I want you to come up with 3 current critical issues in criminal justice. I want you to have a dialogue, but you have to, it was prompt engineering, so you have to tell your bot what philosopher, choose one that you want to engage with. And then I want you to ask those critical questions and share your dialogue. And then the third portion is that what you expected based on what we have learned, right? So is that how Aristotle would respond to some of these, in your opinion and your knowledge of what we've learned so far? It was overwhelming. I had students that gave me 12, 16, 19 page long papers. They were like, this is the coolest thing I have ever done. And when I went back and reviewed, I noticed that it was enhancing how they were critically asking questions because they were engaged in a dialogue. And because I made it fun and we're doing somebody in history, we're doing someone in history, then they just got consumed by it. And so that is something that, obviously I was transparent with them that they were my guinea pigs. So I wanted a lot of feedback. I elicited a lot of feedback, and it was overwhelmingly positive. And that was something that was super easy to implement in my process. I couldn't really measure it because I didn't give them like an examination before we had this process. But looking at previous classes that I've taught, their comprehension of the material from a critical thinking standpoint was a lot more robust, or at least apparently robust, than I had seen in my previous semesters. So that's another way that you can incorporate that kind of things.
And for what it's worth, Rick, I would suggest looking into opportunities to ground conversations either through your own efforts to develop instructional content, or if you're guiding students to using these tools to ground their prompts and inquiries in existing knowledge through the use of retrieval augmented generation tools that are built into some of these large language models, uploading PDFs, providing access to existing content. Most of the kind of frontier LLMs are pretty good now at adhering exclusively to that content, so they'll be grounded in that particular knowledge. There are features in some of those tools that also allow you to kind of develop the concept of projects or portfolios where you upload hundreds of documents, and the GPT or the Claude application will kind of refer exclusively to that as a body of knowledge. And so it's more likely to return fidelity of knowledge. But I think at the end of the day, until we encounter a true artificial general intelligence, we will have to continue to find ways to include humans in the loop, and arguably after AGI, we should still find ways to, if they let us. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, in producing their ethical AI framework, talk about the concept of humans in the loop. So returning agency to the learner, like you were talking about, Amber, in your classroom, where it's an opportunity for metacognitive reflection on the veracity and usefulness of that tool in the discipline that you're looking at. So.
And what a skill to develop. We all know our students vastly lack critical thinking, a lot of them, and they're not very good at critical thinking and that meta-analysis. So being able to do something like this where AI gives them the foundational information and making the assignment about becoming a critical thinker and adept at analysis is something that, to me, that makes assessment so much more meaningful than having them create that original foundational material that maybe took them a while to do, so then we only ask them to reflect in a couple of paragraphs or one page because they spent all this time creating this. Now the whole assignment, we can ask them to spend all their time reflecting and using this information. We will produce students who can think at such a higher level than what we are now, I think.
And if you engineer and design your assessments with that approach in mind, then you can begin to move towards what we might call AI proofing when it comes to academic integrity, because then students' primary task is not the production of a compositional artifact, but their ability to, with erudition, reflect on how they've leveraged that tool in that particular context. That's not the silver bullet for recreating assessment, but it's one of the ways that we can do it. I also want to pick up on something that Chad said earlier that I don't want us to gloss over is not only in the global South and East is there an imperative for education institutions to provide resources that are accessible and low cost to free. That's increasingly the case in the US as well, where income inequality and economic impoverishment continue to be a part of the demographics that we're enrolling into our institutions, increasingly first-generation students without access to the same level of socioeconomic resources that previous generations and cohorts of students had access to. If we can provide open educational resources, either provided by third-party organizations or ideally generated from within our community that bears the imprint of Southeastern University's missional and cultural commitments, then we'll be adding value to our students. So I wouldn't see it as a cheap workaround exercise to not pass costs on to students, but as a way of making college more affordable for them and by bringing that SEU DNA to that content.
Absolutely. And one thing, so from a personal level, my husband started a master's program here and he hasn't been in school in like 30 years. So he was very nervous, particularly about APA formatting. And so he, as a professor being at home, he bugged me a lot. And I was like, let me show you ChatGPT. So, so what we did is I showed him how some of these complex concepts that he was struggling with. I said, go into ChatGPT and ask it to explain it to you as if you were a 5-year-old. And then explain it to you as you were a 10-year-old. And so he had so much fun with it. And so he would call me, he's like, I didn't understand this group dynamic theory, so I asked it to explain to me like I was a 3-year-old. And it said, you know, what did he say? He was playing around and wanted to know about cardiothoracic surgery. And it said, explain it like it was my 3-year-old. And it was like, blood, your heart goes beat, beat. And it bumped to your, right? But what's interesting, and that all like joking aside, you can take concepts that if you have a homeschooled student that's very advanced and somebody maybe that struggled in high school and their literacy level is still, stunted, you can use these tools to explain the same concept at their individual learning levels, which we'll talk about a little bit as well in our session. That's shameless plug. But it's just kind of one of those things where it can level the playing field. And we have such a large divide in our country with socioeconomic status in particular, that this is absolutely groundbreaking.
Yeah, and I think we have to use it intentionally in that way, because left to their own devices, the developer of these frontier models in Silicon Valley are probably not primarily thinking about applications for the public good, but applications for their shareholders. So it's up to us to leverage them in value-added ways. So, so let's move on to our next question. I want to get really particular here, really granular. What is one assignment you redesigned so that appropriate AI use is a feature and not a bug?
I redesigned an assignment. We have a common careers class and are writing for psychology, and it's a 2000 level course. They have not taken research method yet, But they have to write a lit review for the major project, and they have to early in the class write a quantitative research question. And oh my gosh, the amount of time I would spend helping them rewrite questions because these students do not know what quantitative is or a research question, and they'd be bad. They would try hard, they just hadn't been there yet, right? So, so I created a prompt and a whole assignment around it. So for that one assignment, the rest of the class, they do not use AI, but that one assignment, they're given the prompt, they pick their 2 variables they want to compare, they pick their target audience, they put those into the prompt, and then ChatGPT or whatever, they can use it, whatever their source of AI they'd like to use. And it gives them 8 good, solid, quantitative research questions, well written on their variables. Then from there, they pick 3 of them, they have to break down and analyze why they're good, and da-da-da, and then they pick the one. And now they have one really strong quantitative research question to then build their lit review on, and then the rest of the class, there's no AI used in it. But now they have a super strong foundation to end up with a strong lit review. And if they were a junior, I probably wouldn't do this, but most of them are freshmen, and again, they don't know how to write research questions, so it's been really wonderful. And it's also saved me a ton of time in giving feedback on that original question.
Yeah.
Love that.
I think we really need to have a balanced approach in our assignments. I was reading a study this summer that looked at software developers. These software developers were mid-level, they've been in the field for about 5 years, and they were given a task of 200 different tasks, and they were timed on how well they were doing, like were they more productive with AI? And the developers are like, and they look at different stages from the planning to implementation, and all of the developers said, yes, I'm being more productive. When looking at the timing, they were actually 20% slower using the LLM. So I think it's very important for those foundational skills to be built. So one of the assignments I told them, go ahead, use your AI to do this report. It was they had to collect a data set, and they were able to use AI for the coding, some of the exposition, some of the research questions. And I think without modeling, they're really not sure what to do because the reflection they submitted were like, I found it very hard to find the AI useful. So I think instead of just saying use AI, I think we do have to spend more time modeling and demonstrating things from context windows to looking up secondary sources to understanding system prompts and things that are there.
Yeah,
So
I
that would
think
be
an example of kind of pre-AI scaffolding that we could translate to this new paradigm would be in the undergraduate hermeneutics course that's offered at Southeastern. There's always been kind of a great breakdown of how the faithful, informed exegete would approach each step of the process of identifying resources, asking the right questions, beginning to kind of formulate the various parts of that paper, and that's usually provided as a document resource to those students. I think it's probably incumbent upon us to begin doing that when we tell students you're expected to, or encouraged to, or allowed to use artificial intelligence as part of this assignment. So it's really incumbent upon us to develop those pedagogical resources. We're not absolved of that responsibility. We can't just say, go use AI. It needs to be more directed than that. Otherwise, we're not really engaging in educationally purposeful teaching and preparation.
Can I add on something of that? So, and this is real quick, but so my daughter's getting her master's degree from NYU in marketing. And she shared something her teacher shared with her, and it was a class where they were learning and they were using AI to write copy, to write material, because AI is going to change the world of marketing. And I loved what her teacher told them. She said, after you write and you get this amazing content for your marketing campaign, you have to be the final editor because you have to add the soul in. And I thought, wow, that we need to, in every assignment where we're having them use AI, you need to be the final editor because you need to add the soul and the humanity back into what AI is giving you. So I thought that was such an amazing piece of advice for like all aspects of AI use and not just marketing.
Right, exactly. So in SEU's context, the AI is not divinely designed. We're divinely designed and have the opportunity to infuse that back into the work. That's good.
Yeah.
I want to ask about using AI for feedback and evaluation, which is a fun topic. So how has AI changed how you give formative feedback, the speed at which you get it, the kind of specificity, the tone that you use in feedback? How have you leveraged AI to maybe rapidly develop evaluative tools or supports as you engage our increasingly growing enrollment at Southeastern?
Well, for me, one of the, obviously I've used it to enhance my rubrics, but also, I don't know about you, but I find that my feedback tends to be repetitive, right? We're reading 33 papers on the same thing, and I felt like I wasn't really giving authenticity as much as I should to each individual student. So I would take some of my feedback and put it into ChatGPT, and say, what are better ways that I can make this feedback more useful to the student? How could I rephrase this? Or I would type in and say, this is what I'm seeing that they're deficient in, or how can I better explain or give them examples of how they can use this, particularly with criminal justice, because I'm a criminal justice professor. And so I found that, it didn't give me knowledge I didn't know, but what it did is it looked at it in a creative way where I was able to reframe, and I learned from that, right? So it wasn't like I put it in every time and then copy and paste. What I do is I go, oh, that's a great idea. I should relate this to how that theory applies to a recent case or something that makes it more relatable to the student. And I feel like, just from a personal level, that I'm better serving my students by using that tool.
That's great. Other ways that it's informed your feedback?
For me, I was doing a dissertation for one of our doctoral students. They submitted the current draft of the dissertation. We were almost through the process, and I immediately wrote a prompt to evaluate it. Wrote a multidimensional prompt with AI to evaluate it. Evaluated it, sent all of the thread, my prompt, the evaluation, the recommendations within 10 minutes of receiving it to the student, all the members of the committee, and the dean. Everybody, here's what AI says. You don't need me to do this for you, and you should learn how to do this for yourself. Now I'll go read it for myself, and I'll give you my feedback.
Yeah.
And I did. So I went through, I looked at my feedback, then I took all of my feedback, all of AI's feedback, and AI synthesized and integrated all of that feedback and gave a consolidated set of recommendations, which was so long that he couldn't, wonderful leader, everybody we're working with at the doctoral level, highly accomplished, current organizational leaders, he didn't have time to figure out what to do with that. So he had AI read all of it and recommend on a Pareto distribution, what's the 20% that I should focus on to get the maximum improvement into my research project. He'd already passed the project. That was already done. Now he's making plans to implement something within his missional ecosystem, and so he's going, what should I be integrating out of all of this feedback into my real world plans? And so AI said, these are the things you should focus on. This is going to give you the bang for your buck, right? So impact effort matrix kind of stuff. So gave it to him, and he's off to the races. So that would be a really practical example. And I think I keep finding, like I keep searching for guiding metaphors in these days because we're in such new territory. And one of the metaphors that I've thought about for where we are is that there's this kind of stuff you do to grow your body, and there's this other kinds of stuff you do to get stuff done in the world. So, like I don't jog most places that I need to go to run errands. I just drive a car. And I want a set of skills that gets me there as efficiently as possible because I'm just trying to affect change in the real world. And I go on jogs, or I go on hikes, or I go to the gym, and I do resistance training. And if I think about what I can lift as a body in absolute terms, utterly pathetic. Utterly pathetic, right? I mean, I can run machinery that can lift vastly more. I can run a jack, I raised my house. We had to fix our house. We raised our house on a jack. So this little stupid piece of machinery can lift a house. Meanwhile, I'm like, come on,
Yeah.
Okay, but two different use cases, just fundamentally. One, to build your body. One, to affect change in the real world, to get real work done. We need to have clarity. And so I think part of what we're wrestling with is that we need to be thinking about how we modulate between the two and to what degree. Because for a lot of my students, I don't want them spending stupid time like trying to go to the gym. Like, okay, meathead, like you're already strong. Like, let's go get work done in the world. And so when that's the case, I want much larger assignments. I want significant AI use. And we're trying to get real world stuff built. And so I just think those are really different use cases for what it's worth.
That's really helpful, and it sounds like the challenge is not only you as an educator discerning between when that human muscle, that distinctly human element is most appropriate in the application of an exercise, and when that stupid but also incredibly intelligent machine may be the most appropriate tool, but also at the metacognitive layer, helping your students to develop that type of capacity for discernment as well between those two, and that will serve them exponentially in the future.
Because I think all of our students, our hope, maybe that's a better way of saying it, our hope is that our students would be well-educated. And what it means for us to be well-educated will be a continually shifting benchmark. Like I'm an operating system idiot. I'm a phone idiot. Like there are a lot of people that know a lot more than me about the basic systems. I can't fix a car for crap. I'm just incompetent. Like I accept that because there's only so many things I can master. And so that definition of what constitutes a competent person in the world is going to keep shifting. And how we operationalize it on any given day is a little bit arbitrary and a little bit self-referential, I suspect. And so I just think we have to accept that like this is going to be kind of a moving target, and where we're going to be in 10 years, I think all of these conversations are going to appear to us like kind of quaint.
And before I get to Megan's question, I think you've struck on a really important point there, Chad, in that the question for us is not, as educators, is not whether we will engage artificial intelligence and these other emerging technologies, but how we will engage them in light of the fact that we are responsible as authorities of the question of what constitutes an educated and competent person in the 21st century. And if artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies comprise the ecosystem that will sort those out, filter those who are educated and not educated out, then we ourselves must develop some degree of mastery of that space. So it really kind of makes that question a moot point. The question we were grappling with in the past couple of years is, do I engage, do I lean in, or not? Now the question is, how, and in my specific context. Megan, I think you had a point or a question.
I'm probably going to be the Debbie of the conversation today, which is unlike me. I'm usually very optimistic, but I feel like we can't ignore the dark side of AI that exists, and I would love to hear more about the bioethics, not just the ethics of implementing these sciences. I had a student last year who had a relationship with their bot and literally fell in love with their AI. And then I also heard of multiple cases where students are hiring bots to integrate into their D2L platform, do their work for them, and now we have breaches of safety. Like, I'm here for the rah-rah conversation, but I think we need to have some transparency and real conversations too. So sorry to shift it, but I'd really love to hear kind of some other...
Yeah, this is something that I really care about, I think, because it's really revolutionized the tech space, maybe not for the better. A couple of like things. Like there was a third state to ban AI therapists. So there's like Iowa, Nevada, and Illinois, I think. So that's something to be aware of, the psychology. Another thing that I get nervous when it comes to research is that data is not private. That will be if you don't opt out, and I don't even know if there's a way to opt out some models, that goes to OpenAI or Grok or whatever company, and they could do with it what they want. And there's even that lawsuit in the place where the New York Times basically told suing OpenAI, and the court said you're not allowed to delete logs. And the New York Times is basically going through logs. So I think there is also a responsibility as educators to remind these students that this is not your friend, it's still a robot. There are people behind it that don't necessarily have your best interests in mind. So as we build assignments, so thank you for bringing that up. Because we spent a lot of time.
I think the covert job description of most of us at Southeastern is being the character formation and moral Sherpa for our students and guiding them up that mountain. Arguably, and I think if you asked our provost and president, more important than our capacity to develop hard skills and competencies within our students related to the academic programs they're studying. So what does it mean in the context of the shadow side of AI and all of the risks and contingencies it presents to have a mastery of that ecosystem and all of the risks and challenges and ethical problems associated with it, and to guide students through it in ways that minimize harm and help them to develop the appropriate kind of armor and toolkits to navigate it and come out on the other side as a whole person. Mike?
Back in high school, 1980s, there was
Recently.
a kid that got into a teacher's office and stole the final exam. Made copies of it, distributed it to a bunch of other kids, and a bunch of us passed. Otherwise failed that exam. My point is, there has always been and will always be misuses like this, like we're discussing. So maybe one of the ways that we address this by changing the way that we assess student learning.
Yes.
For decades, we assessed student learning with 3 quizzes and a final paper. The accreditors didn't say we had to do that. We decided to do that for whatever reason. And so maybe it's time to rethink how we do that, such as in a competency-based model. One of the features is faculty mentoring. Pretty hard to use AI to lie about your knowledge when you're having a personal conversation with your faculty member.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. That's a great point. And a great plug for competency-based education as an emerging paradigm at Southeastern University as we begin to build towards that. Yeah, go ahead.
I know we're running out of time, so real quick. I've probably fallen on the scale of being more trepidation than anything. I work with the pre-physical therapy, and so I institute a lot of writing, and we do a lot of like lab-based stuff that I'm all for AI, but there's always, even my students like, hey, like you have to write this paper, so I'm curious. I get like the use it for brainstorming, and I'm all about that. My first question though, I guess, is it was brought up in the keynote about a university stance. Do we have a university policy on AI, or is it just like something to put into a syllabus saying like, hey, we're not running from AI, but everybody in here teaches different stuff, so we're all going to implement it in different ways, right? Like Cody up there, the tech guy, probably every day. Me, like, hey, like here's one assignment that I'll probably like am okay with it for now. Like part of that's just because I'm old and my kids have to even, like my wife calls it Al, she's like the so like that's where we're at. Like we're older, right? So, but I didn't know, does SEU have a policy, or is it just left up to us to come up with that?
I'm so glad you asked. Yeah, so if you go to seu.edu and go to the About drop-down and click on Information Management and Digital Learning and scroll down about halfway through the page, we have a community guidance on generative AI that last summer a cross-disciplinary group of us from across SU leadership worked to produce and then have approved by executive leadership and publish. That is not itself a policy, but it is meant to be a catalyst or a galvanizing document from which individual academic departments and colleges and other administrative departments across campus can develop policies. And so it has a framework. It includes a kind of statement on our approach to the use of generative AI, which we employed the services of Dr. Chris Green, who was one of the primary authors of Southeastern's Statement on Human Dignity. And we asked him to ground that statement on our approach to AI in light of that statement on human dignity. So I think you'll find that it matches the tone and tenor of SEU's community quite well. We also do have one university-wide policy for generative AI assistance for students that you can refer to, and it's linked to in that community guidance. It should be present in all of our syllabi, and students can reference that. That particular policy gives a lot of autonomy to the faculty member to decide how AI can or cannot be used in the classroom, as well as establishing some non-negotiables. But I would argue that we have a lacuna, there's a gap in our policy around this topic. And this year is a year that we can work together to develop those policies, not as rigid parameters for our students and for ourselves, but ways of articulating our current perspectives and the best of our wisdom that we can generate together. So I'm glad you asked about that. That's great. Yeah, Marissa.
I frequently email that to my students. I can send that to you. I've got a template. What's your name?
Andrew Bolt, so AR Bolt.
There you go.
at SEU. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this session was worth it just for that moment.
That's right.
Yeah, I'll note just something that occurred to me is Chad mentioned the use of HeyGen. We've used that for some instructional design development as well. Something we haven't done with it yet, and I think we would certainly be interested in taking this step, is not only can it produce a synthetic lifelike, human avatar, but you can also kind of clone your own visage with it by uploading a couple of minutes of a video of yourself, and it will easily replicate a very lifelike, believable version of you talking, giving lectures, that sort of thing. And so speaking of literacies, one of the new leadership literacies cited by Bob Johansson in his recent publication talks about the need for, in a distributed and networked world, for leaders to be present everywhere, to have a sense of being always present. And I think artificial intelligence gives us as educators and leaders an opportunity to do that in some ways. There are ethical challenges and quagmires in that question of reproducing our likeness. There are legal questions associated that are still being litigated. And so I guess if I could kind of wrap what we've talked about today in one word for us all, it's optimism conditioned by wisdom. And that is the approach that we should take to our work with AI, because we owe it to our students and to ourselves as professionals. I want to thank the panel today and everybody for attending. I hope you enjoy the rest of the symposium. Avail yourself of the expo hall again. Attend the second concurrent session, and if you signed up for it, the lunch and learn should be great. Thank you.
Yeah.